The Galactic Heritage Museum stood as a testament to 1,000 years of interstellar cooperation, its crystalline spires reaching toward the twin suns of the allied world of Nexaris. Within its hallowed halls lay artifacts from civilizations that had risen and fallen across the galaxy, but none drew more visitors than the single item housed in the museum's most secure wing, the Caliburn armor. For millennia, the ancient suit had been subjected to connection attempts by every known species in the galaxy. The Zeridans, with their psychic prowess, had tried to merge minds with it. The mechanical synthetics had attempted to interface directly with its systems. Even the energy beings of the astral collective had sought to commune with whatever consciousness might dwell within its gleaming surface. All had failed. The armor sat motionless in its containment field, a marvel of ancient engineering that defied understanding. Its surface seemed to shift between silver and azure, with intricate patterns that appeared to move when viewed from the corner of one's eye. Scholars debated its origins. Some claimed it was forged by the first builders. Others believed it to be a remnant of the mythical predecessor race. What none disputed was its refusal to bond with any living being. Lena Varys adjusted her security uniform and checked her patrol route for the third time that morning. At 28, she was young for a museum security officer, but her military background had made her a natural fit for the position. That background was also the reason she preferred the night shifts and quiet rotations, fewer questions about why a decorated soldier had left active service to guard ancient artifacts. She paused at the threshold of the Caliburn exhibit, as she did every patrol. The armor's azure glow seemed particularly intense today, though she attributed that to the morning light filtering through the museum's transparent walls. In 2 hours, another demonstration would begin. Scientists, dignitaries, and curious civilians would gather to witness yet another failed attempt at bonding with the legendary armor. The demonstration chamber hummed with activity as Dr. Mora, the museum's chief xenoarchaeologist, made final adjustments to the scanning equipment. A Thraxian general, his 4 arms moving in practiced coordination, stood within the bonding circle. Like so many before him, he believed his species' natural affinity for ancient technology would prove the key to unlocking Caliburn's secrets. Lena observed from her post near the chamber's entrance, following standard security protocols. She had seen dozens of these attempts over the past year, all ending in disappointment. The pattern was always the same: initial optimism, focused concentration, a moment of anticipation. Then the inevitable dimming of hope as the armor remained inert. Initiating proximity protocol. Dr. Mora announced, her voice carrying both professional detachment and genuine curiosity. Despite countless failures, she never seemed to lose interest in the mystery. The containment field dissolved, and the Thraxian general stepped forward. His elongated cranium bore the scarification of a veteran warrior, and his confidence radiated through the chamber. He placed his primary hands on the armor's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as with every previous attempt, the armor's glow dimmed. The general's expression shifted from determination to confusion, then resignation. Another failure to add to the ever-growing list. Perhaps we need to consider alternative approaches, Dr. Mora mused, making notes on her datapad. The amino acid composition theory suggested by the Veltharian researchers might— The words died in her throat as an impossible sight unfolded before them. The Caliburn armor erupted in brilliant azure light, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. But the general stood several feet away, his hands no longer touching the artifact. Every head in the room turned toward the entrance, where Lena Varys stood frozen in shock. The armor's glow intensified, and with a sound like singing crystal, it began to move. Pieces separated from the main structure, flowing through the air, toward her, with purpose and grace. "Security alert," she whispered into her comm device, but the words felt inadequate for what was happening. The first pieces of armor reached her gauntlets that slipped over her hands with impossible gentleness. She tried to step back, but the armor moved with her, anticipating her movements. The sensation was overwhelming. As each piece attached itself to her body, Lena felt a flood of memories that weren't her own. She saw the rise and fall of civilizations, witnessed the birth of stars, and the death of worlds. She experienced the frustration of countless beings who had sought to claim the armor's power for themselves. But beneath it all, she sensed something else, a vast ancient intelligence, studying her, evaluating her worth. Images flashed through her mind, her failure during her final military mission, the lives lost due to her hesitation, the guilt that had driven her to seek obscurity in the museum. The armor completed its attachment, and suddenly the overwhelming rush of sensation ceased. Lena stood in the center of the chamber encased in the legendary Caliburn armor, feeling more complete than she had in years. "Impossible," breathed the Thraxian general. "The armor has never shown preference for humans. Your species lacks the neural complexity of most galactic races." Dr. Mora approached slowly, her scientific mind racing. "Lena, can you hear me? How do you feel?" Before she could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the museum. Through the chamber's walls, she could see ships descending from orbit council vessels, moving with military precision. Word had already spread. "They're coming for you," Dr. Mora said urgently. "The Galactic Council won't accept an unknown security guard bonding with their prize. You need to leave. Now." Panic seized Lena's chest. This was a nightmare scenario, exactly the kind of attention she had spent years avoiding. "I don't want this," she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she felt the armor's gentle disagreement. It had chosen her for reasons she didn't yet understand. The museum's walls shook as council forces established a perimeter. Through her new connection with the armor, Lena could sense their intentions. They saw her not as a person, but as an asset to be controlled or eliminated. "The maintenance corridors," Dr. Mora whispered. "Follow them to the lower levels. I'll delay them as long as I can." Lena ran the armor, moving with fluid grace that felt both foreign and natural. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and cramped, designed for repair drones rather than armored figures, but the Caliburn seemed to adapt, compacting itself without losing any of its protective capabilities. Behind her, she heard the sounds of forced entry and shouted commands. The council forces were thorough, professional, and absolutely determined. General Corrin's voice echoed through the comm channels she could now somehow intercept. "The armor must not leave this facility. Use whatever force necessary." The tunnels led to a service bay where supply ships docked. Most were council vessels now, but Lena spotted a civilian cargo hauler still attached to its berth. The armor enhanced her perception, allowing her to see the ship's weak points, the best approach vectors, the precise timing needed to reach it unseen. She sprinted across the open space, the armor's systems, highlighting threats and safe passages in her field of vision. Weapons fire erupted behind her, energy bolts designed to disable rather than destroy. They wanted her alive, but barely. The cargo ship's hatch cycled open as she approached. Instead of a surprised crew, she found a familiar face, Eric Thorne, her former squad leader. His weathered features showed the same surprise she felt. "Lena." He grabbed her armored hand and pulled her inside. "What in the stars is that thing you're wearing?" "Arik, I need—" "Explanations later. Hold on." The ship lifted off with emergency acceleration, its artificial gravity struggling to compensate. Through the viewports, Lena watched the museum shrink below them, but the reprieve was temporary. Council interceptors were already launching in pursuit. During the flight to hyperspace, Arik filled in crucial details. He now worked for an organization dedicated to preserving ancient knowledge from those who would abuse it. Dr. Mora had contacted them the moment the armor bonded with Lena. "There's a research station in the Calthar system," he explained. "Dr. Mora's team has been studying predecessor technology there. If anyone can help you understand what's happening, it's her." The journey to Calthar took 3 days, during which Lena began to explore her connection with the armor. It wasn't just protective gear. It was a repository of knowledge, a teaching tool left behind by an ancient civilization. Through meditation and practice, She learned to access its various systems, each more wondrous than the last. The armor could enhance her physical capabilities to superhuman levels, grant her access to vast databases of technological knowledge, and even provide limited prescience glimpses of likely futures based on current events. But the most remarkable feature was its ability to evaluate the moral character of those around her. It had rejected every previous candidate, not due to lack of strength or intelligence, but because of their intentions. Dr. Mora's research station was hidden within the asteroid field, orbiting Calthar's gas giant. The facility was a miracle of engineering, carved into a massive asteroid, and powered by exotic energy collectors that fed off the giant's magnetic field. "The armor has been waiting," Dr. Mora explained, during their first research session together. "For thousands of years it has been evaluating potential bearers, not for power or glory, but for the wisdom to use its gifts responsibly." She led Lena through a series of tests, each designed to unlock different aspects of the armor's capabilities. In one chamber, Lena learned to interface with predecessor databases, downloading technological advances that could revolutionize galactic civilization. In another, she practiced combat techniques that the armor's previous bearers had mastered. "The predecessors weren't just advanced," Dr. Mora continued. "They were moral philosophers who embedded their ethics into their technology. The armor doesn't grant power, it grants responsibility." But their research was interrupted by the arrival of a council fleet. General Koran had tracked them down, and this time he hadn't come to negotiate. "Surrender the armor, and you'll be treated with dignity," his voice boomed through the station's communication system. "Refuse, and we'll take it from your corpse." Lena felt the armor's response to the threat, not anger, but a deep sadness. It had seen this pattern countless times, beings seeking to use predecessor technology for domination rather than enlightenment. The station's defenses, ancient, but still functional, held off the initial assault. But Lena knew they were outmatched. Through the armor's enhanced awareness, she could perceive the fleet's movements, their tactical advantages, the inevitable outcome if they remained. "There's another option," Dr. Mora said quietly. "The predecessor temple on Calthar's third moon. If the legends are true, it contains the armor's origin point, and perhaps the key to fulfilling its true purpose." The escape from the research station required every skill the armor had taught her. She fought her way through boarding parties of elite Council Marines, each equipped with weapons designed to penetrate ancient armor. But the Caliburn was no mere protective suit. It was a work of art that turned combat into a deadly dance. Arik proved invaluable during the escape, his tactical experience complementing her supernatural abilities. Together, they fought to a small scout ship, while Dr. Mora downloaded critical research data. "Go," she urged them. "Complete what the predecessors started." The forest moon of Calthar was a world forgotten by time. Ancient trees stretched toward the sky like cathedral pillars, their canopy so thick that the surface existed in perpetual twilight. The predecessor temple lay at the moon's heart, accessible only through trails that had been carved millennia ago. Lena and Arik made their way through the wilderness pursued by council forces, who had tracked them from orbit. The armor protected Lena from the moon's hostile environment, but it also enhanced her awareness of every living thing around them. She could sense the fear of small creatures fleeing their passage, the ancient patience of the trees, and the malevolent hunger of predators drawn by the sounds of conflict. Their pursuers were relentless. General Koran had deployed his most elite unit soldiers, who had trained specifically to capture predecessor artifacts. They moved through the forest with deadly efficiency, closing the gap steadily. The first major confrontation came at a river crossing. The council forces had anticipated their route and set up an ambush that should have been perfectly executed. But the armor's prescient abilities gave Lena crucial seconds of warning. She moved like liquid lightning, the armor responding to her thoughts, faster than conscious decision could form. Energy bolts that should have found their mark struck empty air as she flowed between them. Her return fire was precise and devastating, but she aimed to disable rather than kill. The armor's influence was strong. It wanted no unnecessary death. Auric covered their retreat while Lena dealt with the ambush's primary force. His military experience showed as he laid down suppressing fire and deployed tactical countermeasures. But even his expertise couldn't overcome their numerical disadvantage forever. "The temple's close," he called out during a brief lull in combat. "Whatever you're planning to do there, you need to do it fast." The predecessor temple rose from the forest floor, like a natural formation, its walls seemingly grown rather than built. The architecture defied easy analysis. Surfaces that looked like stone proved to be some unknown material that hummed with contained energy. Inside the temple was a maze of chambers and corridors that seemed to rearrange themselves as Lena and Auric explored them. The armor guided her forward past rooms filled with dormant technology and chambers where holographic records played out the final days of the predecessor civilization. They had been philosophers and scientists, she learned. Their greatest achievement wasn't any single technology, but the integration of moral reasoning into their creations. They had foreseen their own extinction not through war or disaster, but through transcendence. They had evolved beyond physical existence, leaving behind their knowledge for younger races to discover. The armor was their final gift, a teacher and guardian rolled into one. It wouldn't grant its power to conquerors or tyrants, but waited for someone who could understand the responsibility that came with ultimate power. At the temple's heart lay the origin chamber, where the first Caliburn armor had been forged. The room was a sphere of perfect proportion, its walls covered in symbols that shifted and changed as Lena watched them. In the center stood a pillar of the same material as the armor, its surface reflecting light that seemed to come from within. As Lena approached, the armor's components began to resonate. Knowledge flooded her mind, not the chaotic rush of the initial bonding, but a structured revelation. She understood the armor's true purpose now, and the choice that lay before her. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the temple. General Koran and his forces had breached the outer defenses. They would be here soon. "Lena," Auric said urgently, "whatever you're going to do—" "I know," she interrupted. "Guard the entrance. Give me as much time as you can." She placed her hands on the central pillar, feeling the armor's systems integrate fully with the temple's technology. The choice was simple in concept, devastating in implication. The Caliburn armor possessed enough power to destroy the Council fleet, to carve a path of dominance across the galaxy. With its knowledge and capabilities, she could force peace through fear, rule through superior strength. It would be easy. It would be wrong. Or she could activate the armor's original protocol, the education imperative. The predecessors had designed their technology to seek worthy stewards of knowledge, not to create dictators. The armor could distribute its accumulated wisdom throughout the galaxy, sharing technological advances and moral teachings with every race ready to receive them. But that choice came with sacrifice. The armor would remain with her, but its unique connection to the predecessor legacy would be diluted. No longer would it seek a single worthy bearer. It would become a teacher for all who sought to learn. General Koran burst into the chamber at the head of his strike team, weapons trained on Lena. "Step away from that device," he ordered. "You don't understand what you're interfering with." "I understand perfectly," Lena replied, her hands still on the pillar. Through the armor's senses, she could perceive the general's true intentions. He saw the armor as a tool of conquest, a weapon to cement the Council's dominance over the galaxy. "You could rule," he said, trying a different approach. "With that armor, you could bring order to every system, end every conflict. Isn't that what you want?" For a moment, Lena felt the temptation. The power was intoxicating, the possibilities endless. But she remembered the guilt that had driven her from military service, the weight of command when exercised without wisdom. "The predecessors already tried that approach," she said. "Do you see any of them around?" She activated the protocol. Light erupted from the temple, a beacon that could be seen from orbit. The armor's knowledge began to propagate, transmitted through quantum channels to every corner of the galaxy. Universities received breakthrough formulas for clean energy. Hospitals gained access to revolutionary medical techniques. Agricultural worlds learned methods that could feed billions without depleting their ecosystems. But the transmission included more than technical knowledge. The predecessor's moral philosophy accompanied every gift embedded in ways that made it impossible to separate the two. Those who sought to use the knowledge for destructive purposes found it slipping from their grasp, incompatible with their intentions. General Corrin's face went through a series of emotions as his troops' weapons simply stopped functioning. Not damaged or destroyed, but rendered inoperative by the same force that was transforming the galaxy around them. "What have you done?" he whispered. "I have given everyone the same choice the armor gave me," Lena replied. "The chance to grow beyond their limitations." The armor's weight felt different now. Still present, still protective, but no longer alone in the universe. Across countless worlds, others were receiving their own versions of the gift, not copies of the Caliburn, but tools suited to their species and cultures, all carrying the same fundamental message. Power without wisdom was meaningless. Strength without compassion was destruction. True leadership came not from dominance, but from service. In the days that followed, the galaxy transformed more rapidly than anyone had thought possible. The Council's authority crumbled as member worlds gained access to technologies that made their old dependencies obsolete. But rather than chaos, a new form of cooperation emerged. The armor had shared more than knowledge, it had shared understanding. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together on projects that benefited all. The fear-driven politics of the old order gave way to something unprecedented, genuine galactic citizenship. Lena found herself at the center of these changes, not as a ruler, but as a mediator. The armor had made her the keeper of its legacy, responsible for guiding others who received similar gifts. It was a heavier burden than she had expected, but one that grew lighter with every small success. Dr. Mora established a new institute dedicated to studying and implementing predecessor teachings. Arik became her security chief, claiming that someone needed to keep an eye on troublesome security guards who bonded with legendary artifacts. General Corrin proved one of the most surprising conversions. The armor's influence had shown him the futility of his old ambitions, and he dedicated himself to restructuring the Council into something that served rather than ruled. It wasn't redemption, the lives lost couldn't be returned, but it was a beginning. Months later, Lena stood in the same chamber where her journey had begun. The Galactic Heritage Museum had been renamed the Academy of Shared Knowledge, and the Caliburn exhibit had been replaced with something far more meaningful, a memorial to the predecessors, and a promise to use their gifts wisely. A young Tlari student approached her, the first of her species, to show aptitude for predecessor technology. The girl's questions reminded Lena of her own early confusion, and she answered with patience the armor had taught her. "The armor chose you," the student said. "Why?" Lena considered the question, feeling the armor's gentle presence in her thoughts. Even now, she didn't have a complete answer, but she had learned enough to offer some wisdom. "It didn't choose me because I was special," she said. "It chose me because I understood I wasn't. The moment you believe you deserve ultimate power is the moment you prove you don't." The student nodded, though Lena could see she didn't fully understand yet. That would come with time and experience. The armor's lessons couldn't be rushed. As night fell over the museum academy, Lena made her rounds as she had in the old days. But now her patrol included dozens of research labs, teaching centers, and meditation chambers where beings from across the galaxy came to learn. The armor hummed softly around her, content, in ways it had never been during its millennia of waiting. It had found its purpose at last, not in creating a single perfect warrior, but in nurturing countless imperfect beings towards something better. Through the Academy's great windows, ships from 100 worlds could be seen coming and going. Each carried knowledge back to their homeworlds, and each brought new questions and perspectives to share. The galaxy was changing, growing, learning. And in a small office overlooking the main hall, Lena Varys continued her work, no longer a security guard protecting ancient artifacts, but a guardian of the future itself. The armor had taught her that true security came not from walls and weapons, but from wisdom shared and responsibility embraced. The predecessors were gone, but their legacy lived on in every choice, for cooperation over conflict, every act of creation over destruction. The armor had waited millennia for the right moment, the right person, the right question. It had found them all in a quiet security guard who understood that sometimes the greatest courage lay not in fighting, but in choosing to trust others with power. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers yet to be discovered. But for the first time in eons, it faced those challenges not as scattered competing factions, but as a community bound by shared knowledge and common purpose. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth, that the armor had always known the greatest strength came not from standing above others, but from helping them rise to stand beside you. The stars shone through the Academy's crystal walls, each one a reminder of how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. But the future, Lena knew, was brighter than it had been in a very long time. The armor pulsed once a gentle acknowledgement of her thoughts, and together they turned toward whatever tomorrow might bring. The choice had been made, the gift given, the responsibility accepted. Now came the hardest part of all, living up to the trust that had been placed in them. But they were no longer alone in that burden. Across the galaxy, others carried the same responsibility, shared the same hope, worked toward the same goal. The predecessor's final lesson had been learned at last. True immortality lay not in preserving yourself, but in inspiring others to become more than they believed possible. And in that lesson, the future of the galaxy, all of them, every species, every world was secure. The Caliburn armor had finally found its home, and in doing so had given the galaxy something far more precious than power, the possibility of becoming worthy of the gifts they had received.